Wait for the music to go up. All right, hello. 15 minutes behind, so I guess we are going to kick things off. Thank you all very much for coming to the second installment of the Art Conference Roundtable. My name's Doug, just to get that one out of the way. And tonight, the whole theme is, I guess, art and advertising. Can it work? Does it have a place? Does advertising have a place within street art? And we've got a really well-balanced group of speakers tonight. I'm going to get them actually to introduce themselves rather than me butchering their experience and what they sort of say that they do. But we have Remi Rough, Sarah Williams, and Stephen from Brandalism. You're not getting a second name. Actually, just as a sort of as a little side point, please don't take any photos because there's certain people. Oh, I've just buggered that. Sorry, ruined your identity now. But yeah, certain people that don't want to have their faces put all over the internet. So if you could avoid doing that, that would be great. So actually, before we do that, I'm going to ask a question. I asked a question last time, and I'm going to ask a question. Put your hand up if you think there is a place for advertising within street art. So hang on, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Are we all kind of coming out the woodworks now? I think we got about 9.
I think it's more 9.
Hang on, yeah, no. There's no like middle ground on this one. This is in or out, all right? We've
done that one already. It didn't work out.
This whole thing is in or out. Oh, you fuck off. So yeah, and we're gonna do about sort of half of this. We're just gonna sort of do our thing, and then I'm gonna really encourage you guys to start asking questions because I feel like last time it really started to kind of get going once you guys started to bring in your opinions and your questions, and it takes it in a completely different direction. So, please, if at any point during this you're like, he's wrong, then wait till that moment comes, put your hand up and then go, you're wrong, and this is why, because that's what makes this whole thing interesting. So I'm going to get you guys to kind of just do just 30 seconds of who you are and what you're about. I'm going to start with Remi Rough.
I don't know.
Cool. We are a round table. Supposed to be doing a lot of talking.
I am an artist. I'm essentially a studio-based artist. I do murals. I came from a graffiti background, but I'm not particularly in that space anymore, if that kind of explains it.
It's good enough for me. Right, we're going to go on to yourself, Stephen.
I'm Stephen. I work with the Brandalism collective, and for those who don't know, Brandalism is a group of artists and activists who uses advertising against advertising and consumerism and capitalism.
Perfect. Oh, that was good. And Sarah?
I'm Sarah. I am head of art buying at MSc Saatchi, and the term, I'm going to explain what art buying is because people do get quite confused if you don't know the world of advertising. It doesn't mean necessarily that I buy art, not for galleries or anything like that. Creative team come up with an idea and they take it to me and they say, we want this picture, and they do me a little picture, and then I try and work out the right person to do that, be it an illustrator, a photographer, a street artist, maybe I will need to know a stylist. So it's kind of it's quite an interesting role, and I spend my days speaking to lovely creative people and trying to match them with brands, basically.
Cool, perfect. So I'm going to go in with yourself, Stephen. You kind of, hey. Wait for the joke, man. Can you maybe just give us a little bit more background on Brandalism? Tell us, who is involved in the collective, who can be involved in the collective, and really, I guess, what your ultimate goal is and why you're sort of striving for that.
Yeah, so Brandalism started in 2012 with just very few people. Now we're an international group, but basically we started off by installing artworks illegally into bus shelter advertising spaces. And in 2014 we did the same thing again. Then in 2015 we went to Paris during the COP21 UN climate talks. I don't know if you guys remember or have seen it, where we installed lots of posters which basically highlighted the links between advertising and climate change. So the ultimate goal, I guess, to put it sort of, to try and put it simply, is to balance out the overly commercial sort of nature of urban messaging, and to draw out the links between advertising, consumerism, and climate change, sexism, racism, all sorts of social and environmental issues. And I guess, it's sort of trying to change sort of cultural narratives of today, which have massively been influenced by advertising and consumerism.
Okay, so is there a place within advertising that can do the things that Brandalism is sort of set out to defeat? Especially using, I guess, art.
Yeah, I think there is, absolutely. I mean, I think brands these days are quite a lot more aware of their social side and being better for the planet and doing good, because everyone's watching them, and because you can look into a brand in a lot more detail nowadays. All you've got to do is get on Google and you can actually find out quite a lot. So I think brands are a lot more conscious of that. And are trying to use artists, work with artists alongside artists to collaborate really, and over benefit to the artist and to the brand.
Do you know any examples of how that's worked off the top of your head? Oh, great!
I don't know if anyone's seen this.
This is the Inter Valentine graffiti from space, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I didn't actually commission Insta, although I wish I did, and it was before I was at MSc, but. It's a perfect example. So Insta is an amazing artist, street artist, and he got commissioned by Ballantine's Whiskey to I'm actually not sure entirely how the conversations went, but I know that it gave him an opportunity to do something that he would never have been able to do on his own. They funded this amazing project where I think it's the world's biggest GIF. So he painted this in Brazil, and they took a photo of it from space, and then he repainted it the next day, and then they took another photo from space, and then they played it on a loop. I mean, it's quite an incredible project, and it's something that he would not have had the opportunity to do had Ballantine's not commissioned him.
Do you agree that there is a place within? So that for me is actually a project that I've always gone to. That, and particularly the Levi's one with Veals, because it was giving artists the tools and the resources to be able to do things that they couldn't do without them. But is there still a point at which you can use that to make the critique? And as someone completely on the opposite side of that, do you see that can still have that same message?
No. I don't think, like, for example, the example you highlighted, for me personally, that has no socio-environmental justice in it. That's just, that's good for the artist. It allows him, her to do something that otherwise was impossible. But it's different to saying that's doing good for the world in terms of the injustices and inequalities that we're seeing.
Cool. Remy?
I have to
Where
agree.
do you sit in this one?
I agree with Stephen wholeheartedly. I mean, it looks great, but what does it do? And that's the point of these things. And too many artists, jump on aeroplanes, fly off to Miami, paint these huge murals, don't ask anyone who it's for, what's happening to the environment, what's happening to the area, where are the people, where's their say. And I just think that really, if you're going to do things at that kind of scale, they have to have some offset.
Do you think the line between sort of artist and brand is just kind of blurring? And artists, I mean, look at the big hitters of the street art game. I mean, they are brands. And do you think that then kind of like voids them from being able to critique stuff like this?
The use of the word artist can be a bit vague there. If you're a brand, you're a brand. Art is art. Artists who make true renditions of what their soul believes is art, then I'll happily call them an artist. If someone's just regurgitating the same image over and over again and using it for this and sending it to this company and that company, it's not art, it's a brand, it's something else, it's graphic design or whatever. It isn't blurred at all. Art for art's sake is one thing. and a brand is a completely different thing.
Would this have changed for both of you two then, if instead of it was, I mean, you, of course, I'm going back to this one just because it's right in front of us and we can all kind of see exactly what it is. If this use of a GIF was something different, would that then have changed your perception? If it was, say, you know, trying to promote, you know, inclusive society, or trying to raise awareness for anything like this, do you think that would have then changed your position? And is that then something that we should start to see more with this use of advertising?
There's a
and
fantastic collective called the Favela Painting Project, and they raise money from various ways, all kinds of ways, and they head out to the favelas in Brazil and they paint the favelas, and they paint them with the people who live in the favelas. And it's a social project. It engages the people. Similarly, like JR did his project there, and that involved the people in the favelas. It draws attention to those people. You know, we don't know what it's like to live in a favela, but then suddenly you're drawn to this video. You can see how people live there. That for me is a long way off from giving me any kind of social interaction. But if I went back to it and said that favela project or JR's Inside Out was funded by Nike, would that then have put you off, and you said, even though I'm being told this and I'm given links to a project that's being set? I know that neither of them are, but... No, but just for the hypothetical situation that we're trying to create here,
I don't know. Do you think that... It depends on what, let's say, Nike is benefit. If Nike has a massive logo attached to it, then I would have issues with it. If they're anonymously funding it, like there's, for example, Lush Cosmetics, and they fund loads of different like activist projects and arts projects. I'm okay with that, because, you know, as activists, as artists, you do need some way to sustain yourself and to sustain your projects. But if the brand is benefiting from it, then I personally wouldn't.
But I'm not okay with Lush though, because it gives me a headache every time I walk past. And my daughter's obsessed with it, and it costs me a fortune. So no, I'm sorry.
That's a good point. I mean, I've never used it. So.
But what if Nike, say, benefit as well as the artist benefits, or like a favela project? So what if everybody involved gets something?
For me, Nike, like the contribution you make as an artist to Nike is as destructive as the benefit that your sort of project might have. For me, that's why I don't see them. I can't see them working together, like within the sort of ideal society that I would.
Would you allow? I mean, I'm not. You know. How, first of all, explain how people can get involved with Brandalism, and then what I'd like to know is, if I wanted to be an associated artist and I had worked with a brand previously, am I going to be shunned, or will I be allowed in? No, you can
contribute. We have lots of people, for example, Robert Montgomery, who was speaking at the previous art conference. He has worked with brands. He now has a fashion collaboration, and he often contributes to Brandalism. So the way Brandalism works is send out call for contributions to an initial network that we've got, but then they can pass it on to people, and no one gets judged on the basis on what they've done in the past. But it's very, very inclusive, and even if we don't agree to the works being shown, unless they're extremely offensive and racist and show Nazis ruling the world, for example, unless they do that, then all the work
every time we do one of these, we get back to the Nazis. Every damn time.
Yeah. So it's extremely inclusive. So whatever you voted before, it doesn't really matter. But we don't want people to like include logos. We don't want this to be about the artists contributing. We want this to be about the ideas behind, what the sort of work they're producing, rather than the artists. So logos are not really allowed. If
you went on to say then, if Obey joined, Brandalism went up and then put up a piece, I mean, you can't see that without it being a logo. It is a logo. Is there a yeah?
It wouldn't be excluded to start. Like it would. I think it would be unfair to exclude people on the basis of what they've done in the past or what they're currently doing. No, it wouldn't be excluded.
But surely you wouldn't have things like Brandalism if it wasn't for people like Shepherd Fairey, who were out pasting up for no reason other than to just get their name up.
Sure.
I don't think it ever started that way. I mean, I guess you'll know yourself. Graffiti. I mean, that was just writing your name on something so everybody could see you. I mean, that was the definition of branding. I mean,
yeah, but it's not branding, is it? It's a coded language. It's not communication for everyone. It's a communication to a subculture. It's the same with music. You make music you listen to music of a certain genre, you play your music to a certain genre. You know, it's the same with graffiti. The difference between that and street art is that street art is a wider communicative tool. Graffiti was never about that. We never gave a shit if anyone understood it, could read it.
But it still revolves around the ego. It still revolves around you.
But
I mean,
within
it's
a
your
subculture,
name.
within
Because it's
a
your name.
box.
You know, that was, you know, if you look at, say, you know, with
But it's
Basquiat
not
or
always about the
Samo,
name, it's about the crew. It's about, you know, you'd have mini collectives and you'd be as much about them as you would about yourself. It was, you know, I mean, to be honest, graffiti saved me because I grew up in Thatcherite Britain, and if I didn't do that, I'd have been sniffing glue.
Yeah, there's a lot of glue sniffers getting
Exactly.
born at the moment. Tell us about some of the
Someone had a question. Sorry.
Oh, we're just going in there, are we? Okay. No, that's fine. No, that encouraged the openness.
My name's Charlotte Webster. I'm from Environmental Art Collective, Human Nature. So just to make clear my position moving out, I fear maybe that at this point there's a bit of a polarisation of debate, because as far as I'm concerned, and I would be interested to know the general view in the room, we basically have within our generation to determine the direction of where our society is going. And that is whether we tackle the huge environmental and social challenges ahead of us or we don't. And whilst I can understand the purist view of keeping art as art, the way that our collective works is basically to choose organisations that are working towards a positive future and helping to propel those ideas and give them a voice where the media blocks them. Because at the moment we work with a media that is predominantly negative and not reinforcing the positive ideas that we need in order to tackle huge environmental challenges. So I can understand your position, Brandalism, in terms of not really affiliating yourself with an organisation. The view that we take is choose a positive organisation, whether it is positive fashion or whatever, and help to promote them. So I would just be interested in your views to where, you know, how far down the line we can go, and whether street art and art does have a role in particular in tackling environmental issues in that way.
I think I'm just going to just take this. I mean, it does. I mean, it has a role in, you know, every single aspect of this. Although I do, you know, there's always that complete that contradiction if you're talking about environmental things and you just use constantly cans after cans after cans. You know, you're always going to get called out for that. But I mean, you know, then you have the idea of the bigger picture, the projects, the people that you're working with. So I guess if any of you want to further that comment, Sarah, I'll maybe throw that over for yourself.
I mean, with everything, it depends how far you want to go. I mean, just to give an example that's not related, a friend of mine decided she wanted to become vegan. Totally fine with anyone who wants to eat whatever. You know, I'm not judging him in the slightest. I quite admire her for, you know, doing that. But then she's like, oh, but I wear leather. Do you wear leather? And I was like, okay, well, you're not going to wear leather. That's cool. So she's wearing man-made things instead. So then you're like, well, you know, you could just keep going with this, and how far do you push it? And I think it's the same with art. You know, you could keep going and saying that artists, you know, shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that, and it gets really extreme. But where do you draw the line? I mean, ultimately, an artist has to make money, and ultimately, we all have bank accounts, so the banks do exist. So, and you know, whether they do good, whether they do bad, we need them. And why not use get an artist? Well, yeah.
I think that's
my point. Sorry, is more that there is very distinctly positive money and negative money, and we have a choice to put our money in a positive space that's working towards a positive future, or a negative space. One of our projects recently with Louis Messiah called The Art of Being was abused by McDonald's and filmed and used in their documentary. We challenged it, they've taken it down. As far as we're concerned, that's us using our power to influence their ability as a brand to go forward in the 21st century.
But
I
that's
did
just
wanna
intellectual
bring-
property, isn't it?
I wanted to
Yeah.
bring. Well, I wanted
be
to. I
McDonald's,
didn't.
could
I
be
didn't quite
anyone.
want to get there yet because I wanted to bring that whole thing up in a little bit. Especially actually now that the aforementioned artist has just walked in the room, so that kind of helps not to put you on the spot there. But I wanted to kind of get to a point because I definitely didn't want this to become about that, and we'll get to that. I mean, with regards to walking around here today, I mean, you know, you were there, you know, many years ago, and
That long?
how
Same.
shit. Yeah, the same amount of years as always. You know, now today it does feel very corporate compared to how it might have once felt a few years ago. I mean, you look on Great Eastern Street, and every week it calls, you know, it's the Shoreditch art wall, but every week it's an advert. Can we call that art? Those adverts art? Actually, but yeah, can we call those adverts art? Because they're painted with spray paint.
I mean, it depends on how you understand art. For me, art is not prescriptive. It's not telling you what to buy or what to consume or how to live your life. It's asking questions, and if it's not asking questions, if it's not leaving it open-ended, it's not art for me. So therefore, the answer is no from my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that actually. I mean, if you're paying someone to do a job and there's a brief involved that benefits a company, then that's not really that's not art.
Collectively, where do you see that putting things? I mean, do you see there being just an increase in this? Do you think this whole thing will then kind of self-consume and collapse? Or do you think there will be more of a need for activist groups like Brandalism to go out and reclaim this? What do you see the future of this going, especially here in a, you know, highly condensed artist creative environment with a big influence of money here? Someone want to throw that? Someone tell me the future of it all.
I would like.
I'd like to keep a positive spin on all this if we can. And I just see a void. I see us living in a void.
The digital world has really changed things massively, and everything is a lot more accessible. It's more accessible to clients, and I think that sort of changed the way that things are viewed. I was speaking to a street artist the other day, and he was saying how he feels there's quite a lot of artists who are coming through now straight out of college or university, and they're calling themselves street artists just like that. And a little bit like the X Factor, they get their first big commission, but they've never really lived the life of a street artist. They've never really done the tagging or been graffiti artists or lived it. They're just going straight in there with the commissions. And I think there's an element of that which is kind of diluting the culture of it to a certain extent. Would you agree?
I think a lot of the artists are their own worst enemies, to be honest. You know, it's this price of fame, isn't it? Everyone wants to be famous. And that's what our culture depicts. Everyone wants to be famous. So you become a singer, you want to be a grime MC, you want to be a graffiti artist, you want to be this, you want to be that. And what I don't see is people making quality things, whether that be art, music, whatever. There are snippets and glimmers of brilliance, which is probably a good thing, because if it was all amazing, then there'd be no point in having it all. But a lot of the artists now, and I know I sound like a grumpy old git, and I am a grumpy old git. I think there's a lot of artists now that just think it's so fucking easy, and it's not.
But what do you mean by quality?
I just mean good work. You know, good work that comes from their soul and that says something and means something and has some technique to it and has some background to it and some history to it. You know, some narrative.
Sure. Yeah.
Just simple narrative, and there's too many artists who just, you know, like you said, just like, bang, I'm going to do this.
I mean, if everything did become about politics or something like that, then you'd be in danger of going the complete opposite way, where you look on Twitter and it's just, there's so many opinions and it's just white noise constantly. So I think there is definitely a place for aesthetic.
You can be political without being political. Malevich was a political artist. He made abstract art to go against the government and to rally the people he was working with against communism.
Do we see any rallying?
I see it. I don't see it on a large scale, but I definitely see it. I don't want to name names.
You want to name names?
I don't want to name names.
Name names.
But I definitely see it. It's there. You just have to look for it. You have to look, and you can see. This guy is doing a commission for Rolex this week. He's not the guy.
Who has to take control then of making sure things stay authentic?
I think the artists. I think they need to lead the conversation. They need to talk to people like Sarah, to work with people like Sarah, to also talk to people like Stephen, to know where the boundaries are of what they do and how they do it, and what they can, because don't get me wrong, I make a living from art. I'm not ashamed of that. That's why partly why I make art. It's my job. But you can be true to yourself as an artist. You can be true to brands if you work with brands, and you can have some offset. You can. My wife owns a big company. It's socially responsible. She works for all kinds of people.
Did you say socially irresponsible?
Socially responsible.
Definitely. You just hold
definitely
right there.
Don't even go down that.
The worst.
I'm going to tell him.
Give any further comments?
I would just love to see artists taking a lot more risk, and I feel like, I'm gonna self-promote this pamphlet. So Brandalism wrote a pamphlet called "How to Switch Sides," which was just a bit of a binary, just not really. It was just kind of to attract people's interest. But anyway, that was aimed at advertisers, people who work in advertising. I used to work in advertising, by the way.
He just let that one in.
Yeah, no, obviously, and there's a reason why I wanted to write this pamphlet.
He's seen how the sausage is made.
Honestly, that's definitely what I left one of the bigger agencies in London for moral reasons. But anyway, that's not the point. It's not about me. The point was going to be this was about trying to get advertisers to leave, or not leave, but to start doing work outside of advertising, more social and environmentally responsible work, maybe work with grassroots movements or whatever. Anyway, I think the same thing counts for artists. I feel like too many people, the sort of obvious thing is to try immediately establish yourself and working with artists and get something big in, and I can't speak as, I'm not an artist myself, I work with Brandalism, I'm not an artist, but anyway, I know it's quite hard to establish yourself. It seems like the automatic normative way of doing things is to start working commercially. And it's really a shame. For me, yes, in other words, I would just like to see artists being riskier. If you have to live in a squat, just do the work that is important to you, and shoplift if you have to, whatever. Live your life.
Because you can become successful from that.
Yeah.
You can.
Exactly.
No, not from. Well, actually, it depends how good you are. But just from being subversive, and you look at Weiwei, it's amazing artist, and he's saying something with everything he does. I'm not saying that people have to say, things with every single stroke of their brush, but just think about it. Think about what you're painting, where you're painting. Think about how that affects the people who live there. And that's those are the questions that just annoy the crap out of me.
You can see one gentleman at the back there had a question itching to go.
For me, it seems that there's a loss of transparency between art and advertising these days. And as much as it is a responsibility of the viewer to be able to tell what they're seeing, do you think there's a responsibility of the artists as well to also be honest and transparent with what they've done? Because for me, that's becoming less and less visible.
Absolutely. I've asked artists straightforwardly, who have you worked with in the past, and they found that a really awkward question. I was like, but why? I am open about having worked in advertising and having worked for big companies, and lots of other people, for example, working with Brandalism, have made that same movement, or maybe even works still part-time in advertising, whatever. I think, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a need for more transparency on that front. Transparency.
I think the world is, maybe not in the last year because it's all got a little bit interesting, but there is this risk of the world getting a little bit beige and everyone playing it really safe. and there are things you definitely can't say, and you can't do anything too risky. And you know, especially if you put something out on social media, that's it. Everyone knows about it, and people are really scared to put their opinion out there, I think. And I think that affects artists quite a lot, and they don't want to do that either. So they're like, I'm just going to play it safe. I'm just going to do something nice that everyone likes. The other point that goes along with that is that, and I can see it in photography. I was talking to a journalist the other day who does lots of writing. Everything is saturated. There are so many people wanting to write. There are so many people wanting to be artists. There are so many photographers. And everyone wants to get their big break, and everyone needs to make money out of it. And so people will do things for nothing. They will do it for free, and you know they'll take next to nothing as a payment from a brand, and then brands start to take advantage a little bit. So I think there's a point really where artists need to take responsibility for themselves and go, no, I'm not going to do that for nothing. And no, I'm not going to do what you say. I want to do something different. I want to do something different, interesting. And I think there is definitely responsibility on artists to push themselves and be different and say no to the big corporations if they don't want to do it. Not just go, oh yeah, I really need to, do that.
I think they need to respect culture. The artists who are part of their particular culture need to respect their culture. The advertising agencies who want to work with those artists need to respect that culture. People have literally worked their entire lives for nothing, just to build these cultures. So you have to have some respect for them. You can't just, throw this shit out there and think, oh yeah, I don't care about the guys from the 70s who created this, or, John Fechner or Scene or Crash. Doesn't mean anything. These people do mean something. They've created these cultures. And we just have to respect them. And that, I think, is the bottom line for me. There's just such a lacking in respect from the people who are trying to do commercial work, the people who are trying to get these people to do commercial work. And if they could just somehow come to some kind of mutual, respectful agreement, the world would be beautiful, I'm sure.
You have to watch Star Wars until you're allowed to buy a can of spray paint or something like that.
85 times at least.
Find balance.
No, but just respect any culture. Same with music. These are cultures we create. Graffiti it's the only culture it's the only art form that's ever been created and taken forward by children. And now it feels that people are just taking the piss out of it. It's child abuse. I said it.
I was like, you're on a positive there. You're on a positive there. I went, okay.
No, but it is. It's one of those things that because of its history, because of its accessibility, people take the piss out of it. People steal. That whole thing with McDonald's and
that's a sort of segue, I guess, to get into this point. Does your question have anything to do with McDonald's?
No, it doesn't.
Thank God.
Great response to
thank God.
Remy, that you were saying that we have to respect those cultures, and sort of all those people that you mentioned that work for free, and that's why we've got to respect them. They're all anti-capitalist people, aren't they? They all work for free. But
pretty much.
We also need to create cultures in the same way that they did, so that future generations can respect those. So therefore, don't we need to work as artists or whatever in an anti-capitalist way against advertising, which is a system of propaganda that propagates capitalism, exponential growth on a finite planet that will eventually destroy everything.
That's a cheery thought, isn't it?
Straight from child abuse to exponential growth. We've gone there.
We just call out advertising as bullshit.
Most advertising is. Sorry.
I'm going to say all commercial advertising.
There have been some, as I said before, some glimmers of brilliance, and there still are glimmers of brilliance. And you can sell a product, and you can be clever about it, and you can be intelligent about it, and you can be creative about it. But 99.3% of the time, it probably isn't.
But I think that, the judgment there is whether it's good creative versus not necessarily good creative. Versus for me, the question is, what is the effect of? When I was still in advertising, I went to this talk by John Hegarty, who's a key person in advertising. Anyway, and he was having a debate with a journalist who was against advertising, and this journalist was like, good advertising is the worst advertising because it works and it has effects and it affects, has effects on like, it accelerates consumerism and blah blah blah. So like for me, like the better advertising is, the worse it is, supposedly. So there's not like a 1% which is really creative and really cool and really interesting, and therefore I accept it. Personally, I mean, yeah, it's quite, maybe I'm sort of sketching too much of a binary sort of between advertising and non-advertising, but yeah, good advertising for me is the worst.
But the best.
But the
best from a
Creative,
perspective
maybe.
different to my own. From perhaps a creative perspective, yeah, I can see
Okay.
why I would say that.
Yeah, sorry, I just got a quick question with conjunction to that. So, I've worked with The Body Shop. Okay. Now, The Body Shop is a company who have very good ethics. They are, from the origin, they've challenged animal testing and so on and so forth. At one point, they sold out and they sold to L'Oreal. L'Oreal, obviously, if you're Google searching, they're an evil company. So I was looking at that as the art that I do. Now, it was a debate within myself as to whether to take the job or not. I actually didn't do it for money. Obviously, I got paid, but that wasn't the reason why I chose to do it. The reason I chose to do it is because of the reason that they wanted me to do the painting. So, as a company, they are now trying to challenge the sourcing of the products that go into certain different cosmetics. So they are trying to start a new campaign similar to what they were doing in the 70s, I think it was 70s, maybe 80s, with the animal testing. And they're now trying to challenge the way in which companies source their products. So they used me and other artists as a way in which to put their campaigns into the public domain, but in a creative manner because they are what they call the naughty one of the L'Oreal company. So they're now actually being sold again. I don't know where they're going to, but my question, I suppose, is: do we, as a group of artists, which is the most contemporary form of what we're doing, do we have a responsibility to perhaps challenge the way in which businesses are working? And if we challenge them, are we being an advertiser that is bad, or are we supporting advertisement which could potentially be good?
Cool, that's quite a good question.
So that kind of goes to anyone who wants to take it.
There was a similar thing actually with Ben and Jerry's. When Ben and Jerry's, they were from the ground up an incredibly ethical, every single aspect, they called it linked prosperity, was from the Madagascan vanilla pod farmer to the distributor would all be paid a fair amount, which is why a tub of Ben and Jerry's would always cost more. But they were, trying to make sure that they were doing things in a fair way. And then they got bought out by Unilever, and it was their, everyone kind of went, oh shit, suddenly now you're, not just a company doing well, you're just one tiny cog in a machine. But as that cog in the machine, they thought their duty to then have that influence on the other factors. I mean, I don't know how much they've changed Unilever since then, not a huge amount, but they are still trying, rather than putting up a barrier and
Probably
saying...
be surprised, because I know Unilever use agencies that are socially responsible.
I guess the question is, with like companies like that, like for me the question is, how much does a CEO earn? How much does a cleaning person there earn? Like, what is the inequality there? Like, just doing environmentally sustainable, even if if their process is environmentally sustainable, that's just one dimension of the political dimension of what it means to run a company. Like, if it's still, let's say the Unilever CEO earns 4 million a year, the cleaner is on minimum wage, it doesn't matter what they do environmentally. Like, that's where it becomes tricky, because you obviously can't know these things in detail.
We had this pesky thing that was filled with regulations, but we've got rid of that now, so that's all good.
Exactly, yeah.
So
like, if it
that's a
continues
step
to
in the
promote,
right direction.
for me, if it continues to promote the capitalist way of like running the world, then it is problematic to contribute to that. If you're working with a small cooperative who works completely horizontally and like everyone earns as much money depending on their needs, then I'm like, okay, that I could see that opens up the possibilities.
But I think there's also, you have to do what you can in the world. Like, none of us are perfect. We all just have to to do what's realistic for our lifestyle. And being an artist, A, you need to make a living, but B, if you've got an opportunity like that where you know you can do something, you're not going to change the world in one step. We'd all love to change the world and make it a better place, but realistically, it's pretty hard to do that. So just being an artist going, yeah, okay, do you know what? This is maybe for a big corporation, but I'm going to do my bit and I'm going to put something towards it.
My point would be like not doing your bit is doing more of a bit than doing the bit. See what I mean? Like not saying no to that would be for me a greater sort of movement than actually contributing to it. See what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm not trying to be too.
No, that's good. I like that. Pick a side, go with it.
An example of, so Unilever is one of our clients, or Unilever I think has every ad agency in the world because they are so massive. Yes. But Dove is not one of our clients, but an example of a Unilever client that is trying to do something good. The Dove campaign with women actually had a huge impact on how women are seen, on retouching on images. That was a massive positive impact, not necessarily related to an artist, but there was a photographer who agreed to do that shoot.
But that's had a knock-on effect.
And that's had a huge effect.
Changed an industry. That's helped change the industry.
So, even though Unilever, on a grand scale, probably not great all round, but there are parts of that huge company that are doing good and have had a really
why are they doing? Why do you think they were doing it? Do you think that it came from a point of like going back to like your way of expressing what good art is? Did it come from a point of like, okay, we actually want to see that positive change in the world, or was it a sort of not green? What's the equivalent for greenwashing when it's talking about sort of body image, whatever, social washing, no, self-washing, whatever. I just made up a word.
Washing.
I would say, I'd be interested to find out what people's actual intentions were with that, because so
does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, it
does it matter what their intentions are? If their intention is to go out for profit, but while they're going out for profit, they made women feel more confident. Like, who cares if that guy was going out for profit?
Because then people who go, okay, I am just doing it for that profit, then their lifestyle is not going to be in line with sort of what they're promoting in that campaign. Like, they're not living a different lifestyle through that. They're just doing one specific thing and actually don't really care about it because they just want to make more money. Contribute to the inequality in the world, and
I seem to remember reading something about that ad campaign, and it was led by a couple of women who worked at an agency who thought this needs to be done. That's I can't give you any more details on that, but not everyone in the advertising world is evil.
I know, I used to.
Not everyone who is. I
have lots of friends who still work.
Not everyone who is a capitalist is evil. We all have children to raise, mortgages to pay, but it's about, as I said, having a respect for the world, the universe, people, humanity, all of the things, all of the above. And you know what? You can't always do that, as you said, Sarah. No. But if you can just chip away at it, and you are chipping away at it, which is amazing because you're bringing attention to a slightly subversive side of it, but nonetheless you are bringing attention to it.
We got a question.
Yeah, a bit of a kind of comment really, but I would just say that I definitely echo that really. We've all got a role in whatever we're doing in life, just like breathing, getting up every day, have an impact within the world. And I think it's for all of us to use it at every kind of scale, everywhere we're working. Those people in the ad agency that were like, this needs to happen, they felt it, they honoured that, they went with it, and wow, like look at the impact from the artists, everyone. So everything that we're all doing is important, and I think everyone's got that role to play. It's not about ping-ponging responsibility. We've all, got to kind of honour that and take it forward in our different ways.
Well said.
Yeah, I think
I was going to go back and kind of try and get back onto that McDonald's thing, which I wanted to kind of air out. And no, we're not doing the McDonald's thing. We're cancelling the McDonald's thing.
I have something and I'd like Stephen to explain a bit more. So Brandalism, I don't know if you are all familiar with Brandalism, but after today you need to go home and do your research on these guys because they are incredible. Can you explain a little bit about the project that you are about to launch that hasn't actually gone public yet? I received some information from your team about it prior to this conversation. And I think it'd be really interesting to explain a little bit about what kind of platform you are and how you facilitate other artists internationally to join Brandalism and what you guys stand for.
Is anyone a private investigator here? No? No. Because I hinted at it earlier. So the way Brandalism works is it has, since 2012, it has started building up quite a large network of artists, including John Feckner that you referred to and Robert Montgomery, both sort of renowned and less renowned artists. And basically anyone can contribute, but we send out a call for contributions to the existing network of artists and activists and whoever we have sort of in our network that we have contact details of. We send them, do you want to contribute? This is the kind of briefing. It's very similar with advertising in a sense. This is the briefing. Send it around to people and get them to send their sort of contributions, and if it's an advertising takeover, then we'll put them up in advertising spaces like billboards or bus shelters, depending on what the action is. And in response to your question about what's happening now, soon, so in 10 days, so Brandalism has started working with groups like ourselves who are both anti-advertising but also a bit more affirmative. They're also interested in actually imagining positive futures. It's not just anti. So we've started working with organizations and collectives of artists and activists and just general citizens who are concerned with advertising and who want to sort of change the world for the better through that. And so in 10 days we've got an action where everyone can contribute if you want. The briefing is, man, I feel like in an advertising meeting. The briefing is, you can basically do whatever you want. Maybe you should send the call out. We create a public call out that we shared on the Brandalism Twitter, if you want to see it. That is about, between 22nd and 25th of March, everyone can contribute in whatever way they want to sort of critiquing advertising, but also imagining futures beyond consumerism. And you can throw it online, and at the moment we've got contributions planned from about 15 countries, and that will include an advertising takeover, but it will also include all kinds of workshops, webinars, film screenings, just all sorts of things that kind of critique advertising, but also more positive. So and if anyone wants to contribute, go to Brandalism or come and chat to me afterwards.
Cool.
So do you, by that project, are you encouraging illegal activity by people going into
that sounds like a private investigator question. that's a setup right there. There's a camera on there.
The private investigator is like, ooh, she just made it easy.
I'm here to spotlight you now.
Yeah. Are we encouraging that?
I mean, don't they have to?
We're not encouraging.
Artists that participate, aren't they, about going into the public domain and taking out adverts, putting up their own artwork?
We're not necessarily, it's open, like we don't want, like lots of people will be taking legal actions, other people will be taking illegal actions. Brandalism is basically, so the network that we've created is called Subvertisers International, and Subvertisers International has sent out a call out for contributions, legal, illegal, whatever people want to do. Like, we're not determining that in advance. So people can decide if they want to do something crazy and smash up an advertisement, that's their call, but that's not necessarily what we're saying, you should do that. It's very open.
It's like Fight Club at the end with Project Mayhem. Anyone got a question? You got any questions?
Okay, should we talk about flying leaps? Slightly, those people.
You want to ask the question?
Yeah, I kind of want to ask the question.
Flying leap.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
I was,
I'm a bit confused.
I was going
about
to
what
say
you're
that I feel
doing.
like I straddle
Yeah.
both sort of areas because I get artist images and then I get them posted around the country both legally and informally, shall we say. And of course then I'm trying to sell the artist images as cheap posters. So I think there should be a gap between fine art and sort of, stuff you can get for pennies. So that's, I didn't know you were going to bring that up. Sorry.
Why? Because I'm really confused with, where you are. So,
Well, I used to be a fly poster. I was on the brush, as it were, for 8 years. And then I moved into running billboards, a little advertising company. Then I taught for 15 years running an art design project. I got made redundant. So I thought I'd bring all my skills together and start a project whereby I get artist pictures on the streets and sell them cheaply.
So I think what you're doing with the project
You
is
take
kind
the
of blurring
photographs
the
of
boundaries,
artists.
isn't it? It's
Yeah, I
kind of
do.
blurring
Can you
boundaries.
explain what
That's
exactly
fine.
it is you do? I don't
I'm a
know.
bit confused. What,
So I get artist
yeah.
images, then I put them into 4-sheet posters
Mm.
and 16-sheet posters, get them posted around, and then the second tease and reveal part of the campaign is I put flying leaps on the bottom of their art, so it becomes an advert
Ah, I
rather than
see.
just an artwork, and then I try and sell the posters through the website. I'm not selling many yet, so you're okay.
Does any of that money go back to the artists?
Well, that's the main question,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean,
And then I'm making
it
persons.
does go back to the artist, so essentially it does go back to the artist, but I'm also trying to do things like do an artist poster in support of the Joe Cox Foundation, so all of that money will go back to the artist. I mean, it's not a binary thing, is it? We don't live in a binary world, like some of you were saying. We have to negotiate the world that we live in, and you make your individual choices according to your experience, your ideology, blah, blah, blah. So,
Do you post your the posters on illegal spots?
yes, and legal stuff.
Oh.
Do you negotiate the legal?
No, as I said, I used to be a fly poster for a long, long time, so I know how it works throughout the country, part throughout Europe, and getting to know America. It's called wild post.
Most billboards are kind of illegal, aren't they?
Sorry,
I was going to ask if anybody else had a question. There will be a nice period after this where we can all.
It leads quite nicely into fly posting because at the streets at the moment, you know, in Shoreditch you have artists and fly posters kind of battling over the same space. You know, whose responsibility is to stop the fly posters? You know,
It's
those
actually,
guys getting
sorry to
arrested.
interrupt, it's actually going back to the bad old days because the councils have no money anymore. They've
So
got
they
no
can do
one to
anything
clean
they want.
down, they've got no one to chase up.
But the graffiti artists get chased around the city. You know, as they get put in prison, they get
Yeah.
fined.
Well,
Whereas
so
the fly
yeah.
posters, you can't really catch them, can you? They're just in the van, they're off. We're just like, you know, this is their business.
That's
Everyone says
stencilised.
don't mess with the fine posters.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a
Stencil
fly posting
artists.
mate who's done 80 times in 3 months.
What are they?
It's not very good then, is it?
Sounds like he needs to fucking hold his
Get
crap.
quicker.
I did it for 8 years and was never arrested once.
Wow.
You're
Skills.
What are they? What? Just in case we're inspiring the masses here to go out and start taking control
Do it.
and get the Rage Against the Machine on and take the power back. What are the repercussions if you are caught doing something? Whether it's more so not so much tagging or anything like that. I'm looking more at ad busting or I guess for fly posting.
I think for fly posting, the law changed in about 2002 so that the police could prosecute the beneficiary of the poster, whereas previously you were only done for criminal damage. The actual fly poster was done for criminal damage. So that change in the law meant that the police could then go into a record company and arrest their PR group because you can now get done for.
Stephen, have you had any hairy situations, or I guess out of the collective, I'm sure there's been a couple. Has anything kind of gone further than a slap in the wrist, a stern caution?
Not until now.
No? Oh,
No, I mean there's
Okay.
Brandalism has put up more than 1,000 posters illegally so far. The maximum is basically having people working for companies like JCDecaux, who's the biggest outdoor advertising owner in the world, like workers basically coming up to us and being like, "What are you doing?" We're like, "Oh, it's an art project, blah blah," and they give us the tools and then they head off again.
So it's pretty safe. It's a safe hobby to take up.
I mean, I'm not going to
I
say
mean,
it's
if
allowed.
you're walking up to a bus shelter and you're like, you know, opening the door with a key and you're like putting stuff in, who's going to say
It's look
anything?
legitimate. Like you've got your high-vis vest, you've got the logo
Yeah.
of the company on the back. You just act cool.
See, that's cheating.
No, it's not.
That's cheating.
It's not.
You should be wearing a black hoodie, bowling up,
That's the
smashing the
thing.
glass.
Sketchy as fuck.
That's the beauty of it because it's like it doesn't exclude as many people from the practice. Like it's harder to get caught. More people can do it as a result because it's less stressful than walking around with a bucket of glue and being very obvious about the illegality of what you're doing. I think it's more inclusive, which I really like
Now,
about it.
Stephen, where
What
can
about
we
if you're
get
a woman in a high-vis
a...
jacket? If I'm in a high-vis jacket as a woman, I stand out.
We have lots
if
of
you're
people.
a man, you can
No, we have lots of lots of people who contribute to us are women. I would say like 35 to 40% of people putting up posters for big actions are women. And it's just about confidence and acting cool. Yeah, smoke cigarette.
Yeah, but now we know we're going to see you. We're going to. There's that lady.
How do we get hold of a key
You
for
can
a bus
buy
shelter? I'm trying to.
There's a cheaper way to do it. There's
the
there's-
Jordan Sewer.
There's something called a hack pack. There's so I was being
Sounds
suspicious. You can buy it on Stripe magazine. They basically sell these keys for £6 online. It's called an ad hack pack.
Okay, ad hack pack. All right, we're gonna go into the final. We're gonna go into the final.
He knows more.
Oh,
he
shit.
can get the specifics.
Okay.
They're not available online anymore because somebody, I suspect, from an Apple advertising company made a complaint.
Bloody grass.
So what's the way to get them?
So the way to get it now is to go into the Ad Hack workshop, which is a workshop that's run once a month at an activist space
It's not a friend.
in London called the DIY Space for London, where some people have installed 6 sheets plus stop advertising space. And for the entrance fee you get, which is £6, you get that ad space hat pack, which has the 3 tools in it that you can open about a third of bus stop advertising spaces in the UK, because they're all standardised thanks to globalisation.
I love that someone's monetised it, that you have to buy the key.
You've got to buy the tool.
Kind of defeated the whole object and bought capitalism.
gotta buy it.
You kind of shot yourself in the foot.
Sorry.
Companies owned by Unilever.
But it does sound like the best Tinder date ever. Just come on, honey, forget the pub. Let's go ad busting.
That's £6.
£6.
Sorry, I'm just
sorry.
The keys are a T30 security tool, it's a H60 AMP key and a utility. You can find them on the internet.
And it adds up to £6 anyway. Like if you're going to buy them, and if you're going to buy them somewhere else, you're still going to be paying, unless there's
£6.
Yeah.
I'm going to get them. I'm going to sell them for
Well, I think we should all go and get them. So look, we're going to kind of start coming towards the end here. Has anyone got a sort of final question that they would like to ask any of our speakers tonight? We have one. Is it a question though?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Probably to Remi actually. It's just picking up on a point that you said about artists being true to themselves when they work. How do you think artists can recognise their own power, particularly those the younger artists that are sort of coming into the game? Because my belief is that artists are more powerful than ever, and if they use that power, then they could be phenomenal.
So how do they realise their own power? The engagement, I guess. The people's reaction to what you do. I mean, it's quite an ambiguous question. It all depends on what the artists are. I think to have some power, you kind of need to build that power up. It's like you know those little torches that you have to squeeze. Go shoo, 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 and then you get the light. You kind of need to get there. You can't just be an artist and I have power. You have to say something. You have to have an engagement that people can relate to and understand what it is you're trying to say, I guess.
Yeah. I have quite a lot of artists come and see me, and you're absolutely right. A lot of them, and this is a slight generalisation, but artists tend to be quite. Most of them don't want to self-promote. Most of them don't want to go out there and sell themselves. They just want to be in a studio and paint and make cool stuff. And I see so many people come to me and they have no idea how amazing they are, or that they do have a different angle or something interesting to say. And it's about. I think it's about being brave, actually, and just getting yourself out there in whatever way it is. And everyone has a belief, and everyone's got an opinion on something, and it's just about believing in whatever that is and going out there and doing something with it. And it's about talking to people like me, because I when I see someone that's got something amazing, I'm like, do you know you could do that, or you could speak to this person, not necessarily in relation to advertising as well. If you've spoken to that gallery, could you go and see this person? You know, it is just about empowering people and making them realise that they are amazing and there is stuff they can do.
One thing I would add as well, there's a lot of literature. There's books you can buy that give you the confidence and tell you how to work in that environment. And there's a particular one I've got called Artworks, and it's an American book, so it doesn't kind of relate on every level. But yeah, it's a fantastic book. If you're trying to make it in the art world, it's a really good book. It just gives you an insight into how to approach galleries, how to talk to galleries, how they should talk to you, how you should approach them, and how you should treat yourself. So, there's a lot out there.
Any final comments on that, Stephen?
I just say get involved with Brandalism, see what happens.
Good.
Advertising.
Nice plug. Nice plug. Look, can I get you guys to put your hands together for Remy, Sarah, and Stephen? And the next